Okay, so today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite places on earth, and that is Zion National Park. I'm going to go through several of the hikes, and then at the end I'm going to talk more about the layout of the park, shuttles, parking, permits, that kind of thing, just a general idea of what to expect when you go there. Let's jump into it. First hike I'm going to go over is the Zion Narrows. Now, you've probably seen images of the Narrows before. Looks like what you're looking at in the video. It's an incredible place and a really fun hike. So most people that do the Narrows, they do it from the bottom up. You go in at Riverwalk, which is a paved hike, get back to that later, and you just hike upstream for as far as you want. The turnaround point, they don't let you go further than Big Spring. Longest you can hike up is 9 miles total out and back, but you really just turn around wherever you want. So for this section, you can see in the video, you're walking in water almost the entire hike. So you're going to want the appropriate shoes for that type of walking. I'll generally just use regular hiking shoes, wool socks, and just get in the water. Another thing that really helps a lot with stability is to bring hiking poles. Found those extremely useful on this hike. Now, I should mention, in recent years, there's been this cyanobacteria that is in the water, and it's toxic to people and pets. So they tell you don't get any of the water into your body. You don't want any scratches, cuts, scrapes, open sores, don't want to drink any of it. You can check on the website, you can check at the visitor center to see what the levels of that toxin are, but just be aware, it's an issue. So another way to do the Narrows is the top-down route. Now the top-down route requires more planning. Permits are required, they're not required for the bottom-up. And in addition to the permits, you're also going to want a shuttle to drive you up and drop you off at the north end of the trail. The trail itself from this route is around 18 miles from point to point. It's a through hike. Get a shuttle up to the top, take a park shuttle back to your car at the visitor center once you get to the bottom. But it just gives you way more of the canyon to see. And the north half, past Big Spring, where the bottom-up hikers can't go, a lot more solitude up there. You've seen the video of the bottom-up section, a lot of people there. So a little more privacy and a little more adventure. Now, a couple more things. If you do the through hike, water, you're walking in it most of the time, but you don't want to drink that. Big Spring is the only reliable source of water in the canyon, so plan accordingly. Finally, there are assigned campsites. There's 12 campsites total. You reserve those ahead of time. I think they save some of them for walk-ins that you can get them at the backcountry desk, but I'm not 100% sure. And the rules always change, so even if that is the case now, make sure that you check the website, talk to the visitor center, and know exactly what the rules are when you're planning your trip. Anyway, Zion Narrows, incredible, great hike, highly recommend it. You're eventually going to come out on the Riverwalk Trail, and that's pretty popular. It's a much more accessible trail. It's actually a sidewalk that goes along the Virgin River. It's just under 2 miles total out and back hike from Temple of Sinawava to the end of the maintained trail, where you actually have to get into the Narrows if you want to do that hike. But it's a popular option, especially for people who don't want to get into the water and just want to see the area but have a mellower hike. No permits required for the Riverwalk, but you can see in the video it's very popular. It's extremely crowded. It's Zion. Get used to the crowds. Or you can try areas that have lower crowds. On the north side of Zion, there is the Kolob Canyon area, and there's just not as many people over on this side. There's a long drive to a scenic overlook, or you can hike a couple of trails. I'm going to show you the Taylor Creek Trail because that's the one that I've done up there. There's actually 3 forks to this trail. What you're looking at in the video is the middle fork, but it gives you a good feel for what the trails look like on this side of the park. Overall, Taylor Creek is about 5 miles total out and back. You have to turn around at this alcove that you're looking at, but a really pretty area. And again, a lot less crowded than the main part of the park. So another section with lower crowds is Lava Point. There's a couple of trails up here. The one that you're looking at in the video is called the Wildcat Trail, and it actually leads to the Zion subway. The subway requires permits. They do it in a lottery because it is that popular, but it does keep the crowds down quite a bit when you're out there. And there are 2 ways to hike this. I got to put in a disclaimer here because the route from the north end into the subway is not a hike. This is actually a technical canyoneering route where you need a rappelling harness, helmet, rope, and the ability to use it. Lots of people have gotten in trouble doing the top down without the gear and the experience to do it. But there is an option to take the bottom-up route, which requires no technical canyoneering gear. However, you've already seen like Riverwalk, going to get to some other hikes in here that are very well maintained, very obvious. Some of them even have sidewalks and handrails. That's not the subway. It starts out at the parking lot. It's immediately this very steep drop in elevation. The trail is not really well maintained. You can see it in the video here. It's rough. And then when you get down into the canyon, you just follow the stream going upstream. But that's not as easy as it sounds. There's no maintained trail once you join up with the creek. It would just wash away every time it flash flooded down there, so they can't have one. So you need to be ready for that. Otherwise, you're going to be in for a really long day and possibly a really bad day. Lots of walking in the water, lots of scrambling over boulders. Wayfinding is a necessary skill if you're going to do the subway. And I don't want to make it sound horrible because it's not an impossible hike. But again, it is something where I've personally seen people who got in over their heads. Just want everybody to be safe out there. Anyway, the hike from the bottom up is 8 miles total out and back, so around 4 miles each way. And you come up to this area, which is where everyone gets the pictures, and it's what the subway is named after. It's kind of rounded out like the subway. Just an amazing and photogenic area. Keep in mind, after you're done, you've taken your pictures, eaten your snack, hung out, and you have to turn around and hike this whole thing back. Through the creek, up the hill, back to your car. Leave enough time, and just be prepared if you're going to do this one. It's worth it, though. Now, another route you can take from Lava Point is the West Rim Trail. The West Rim Trail is about 16 miles. You can go in at Angel's Landing or do like my wife and I did when we were there. We did an overnight backpacking trip. We started at Lava Point on the West Rim Trail and came out at Angel's Landing. You can also do this as a day hike and just hike the whole thing all at once. Keep in mind you do need a shuttle because you go in at Lava Point and you come out at Angel's Landing or vice versa. Either way, there's no park shuttle that runs from one side to the other. Shuttle required and permits are required. If you're going to camp overnight, there are 9 campsites. They're signed. If you're going to thru hike it, obviously don't worry about that. There's this much elevation loss going from Lava Point down or that much gain coming from Angel's Landing up. The views, the adventure, it's worth it. It is a beautiful trail, especially as you get closer and closer to Angel's Landing. And actually a lot of people will stop off and do Angel's Landing because you come down to the saddle right before you go up the chain section. West Rim Trail, one of my absolute favorites in Zion National Park. Highly recommend this one too. There wouldn't be a Zion video without talking about Angel's Landing. Sure, you've seen pictures or video that look like this. Heard that it's the most dangerous trail in the US. All that kind of infamy of Angel's Landing. But honestly, it's just a great trail. It's about 5 miles out and back. Most people will do it from the Grotto trailhead and go up to the top, turn around, come back out. It starts off paved, lots of switchbacks, has a section called Walter's Wiggles, which has this many switchbacks. It's a lot of switchbacks. And then shortly after you get past those, you are now on the saddle right before the infamous chain section. Now, they just implemented a system recently where it is now permitted. I believe the permits start, like anybody can hike up to the saddle, but if you want to take the chain section all the way to the top, you have to have a permit. Now, I think the reason for the permit process on this is it's just overcrowded. And it just turned into log jams where people were trying to go up, people were trying to get down. There's only one section of chain. You can't go around people because of all the exposure and the drop-offs. One of the most dangerous things about it was the crowds. I've heard of people that freak out, they freeze up and just stop everyone from going up and down because they can't get around this person. So permit system may not be a bad thing. Regardless, it's an amazing trail. It lives up to the hype. Really, really enjoyed this one. Definitely put it on your list. So right next to Angel's Landing is the Emerald Pool Trail. Quick little hike, 3 pools, lower, middle, and upper. This is the lower one. It has a little bit of a waterfall coming over it. Beautiful place. Middle pool. Then there's the upper pool, which is just kind of a serene, relaxing area with not that many people usually. Anyway, Emerald Pool right next door. No permits required. Good way to fill a couple of hours if you have a little bit of time left in your day. Another short and sweet one right off the main road is the Canyon Overlook Trail. It's about a 1 mile out and back hike, a couple hundred feet of elevation change, and just incredible views of the park. Really recommend this one if you have the time. It is difficult to find parking. It's a small parking area. It's right off of the main highway through the park, so lots of traffic. But if you can find a spot, definitely worth parking, checking it out. Now, a side note, when you look down from Canyon Overlook, you're looking into Pine Creek. And just because it's cool and I've been there, I want to show you what it looks like down inside Pine Creek. Canyoneering is a whole other aspect of Zion. I'm not going to go over it because this is a hiking video, but man, it's cool. So those are some of the high points as far as hikes go. Now I'll talk a little bit about the park because it can be confusing if you haven't been there before. So the main road in Zion National Park is Highway 9, goes all the way through the park, extremely scenic, beautiful road, tons of trails and hiking that you can do directly off the road. It's worth it just for the drive itself. If you come in from the south side, the visitor center is right there, and that's kind of the heart of the park. That's where they have a gift shop. They have the backcountry desk where you get your permits. There is the Zion Outfitters that is right there that you can rent shoes, walking sticks, get any gear that you might have forgotten. Restaurant, bar there. Campgrounds just past the visitor center. And it's actually where the shuttles pick you up. So this is a confusing aspect. If you haven't been to Zion before, you need to use a park shuttle most of the time to get to Zion Canyon, where Angel's Landing, Observation Point, Zion Narrows, a ton of those hikes are. It's a beautiful drive and a beautiful canyon in itself, but I don't think it's set up to handle the amount of vehicle traffic. Not a lot of parking up there. So they run shuttles from by the visitor center. They will run you up into this section of the road to access these trails. Now, there are times when they do lift that and they open the road. You can drive your personal vehicle in there. I've gone there before, but parking's limited. So you've got to leave early and you got to have a little bit of luck to be able to find a parking space. If I'm being a little bit vague about, the times that they do this or permits or anything like that, the reason is they're always changing the rules. So if you're planning a trip to go there, call ahead, check the website. You need to go in and make sure that you fully understand what their rules are. Like I said, they just changed the permit system on Angel's Landing. Before that, they had permits that were required to get on the shuttle. I don't think that's in place right now, but rules are always changing. Check the website, call the park. Another thing that I almost forgot to say, to get up Zion Canyon, if you don't want to take the shuttle, you can walk the road. It's not going to be fun. Or you can rent a bike in town and you can ride the bike up there. That's just another option. Nice to have. So if you want to go to the other areas of the park, you actually leave the south end of the park, go outside of the park boundary, take Kolob Terrace Road. That goes up to Lava Point. Or go to the 15 and take that to get to the Kolob section. So several access points. It can be a little intimidating. So I've talked about permits, a couple of different ways to get permits. You can show up at the backcountry desk. They do reserve some permits for walk-ins. Get in line, wait till they open, see if they have them available. But most people are going to want to get their permits in advance online. So depending on what hike you want to do, permit system is probably going to vary. Can't describe it for all of them, and it does change. Go onto the website well in advance of your trip. They usually release permits a couple of months before. So if you want to go in May, you'd have to book it in February. I believe now they release the permits on the 5th of every month. So the entire month of May would go up on February 5th, just using an example. Look online and get familiar with the permit system. Don't just think, hey, I'm going to go on there, Friday and book permits for Saturday. It's Zion. It's extremely popular. Plan well in advance. Now, a somewhat frustrating part of the permit system is for a lot of these hikes, you have to pick up your permit in person at the backcountry desk the day before you go in. That kind of sucks if you're going in and you don't have that extra day. They don't let you do it any other way on several of the hikes. I believe the subway is like that. Not sure about the Narrows, but a lot of these hikes, you do have to go in person the day before. So look into the specifics of the permit that you're getting, of how you have to pick it up. There used to be a thing called Zion Express, where I think you can actually print off the permits and not have to go there in person. Not sure if that's still in place, but when I was a Zion Express member, you still had to go to the backcountry desk, watch this video, sign all this paperwork in person. So the Zion Express is helpful, makes it a little more convenient, but you still have to go and do the in-person process to get that to start with. So if you're a frequent visitor, definitely worth it. If you're going once, it's not really going to help you out that much. You're probably wondering, why do they do this? And there's a couple of reasons. I've seen the rangers, they will ask you a lot of questions. Like if you're going in the subway and you've got top-down permits, they'll say, well, do you have a harness? Do you have a helmet? Do you have gear? And having that in-person interaction is a good way to make sure that people don't go in expecting something different and getting in over their heads. And the other reason is to get the latest and greatest conditions. One of the main dangers in Zion is flash flooding. Whether you are having a ranger to explain this to you or not, you should always check the weather, especially if you're doing something where you're in the creek like the subway or the Zion Narrows. There's also issues like the level of toxins in the water that you want to know about. And it's the desert. It's super hot in the summer. It snows and gets frozen in the winter. You absolutely need to know the latest conditions before you go on your hike so you're sure you're safe. Zion is actually very prone to rock slides. I would say over the last 8 or so years, almost every single trail that I've gone over has been closed at one time or another due to rock slides. And this is video from when we were at Taylor Creek. We actually saw a rock slide happen on the North Fork of Taylor Creek. I'm not saying this to make you think, oh my God, I've got to worry about rock slides. But you do want to think about it from the angle of, are the trails I want to hike open? So check that as your trip gets closer, plan accordingly. Another thing that I've seen a lot of questions on are animals. The animals in Zion just don't give a about you. They're so used to people. They know they can't be hunted. They're mellow. Don't worry about animals. If you hear a rattlesnake, keep your distance. You'll be fine. Animals are there to get their pictures taken. So the trails, I've kind of gone through this a little bit, but I feel like it needs to be mentioned again. I know that some people come to Zion and they're expecting this on-rails experience where the trails are very clearly marked. There's sidewalks or asphalt pathways they can walk down. And as you've seen at the beginning, that is not the case for all the hikes in Zion. Probably said it before, but subway, especially the bottom up, I've seen people, you do the Riverwalk, you do Canyon Overlook, you think, oh, that's how all the trails are. And then you get down there and you're walking up a creek with no signs anywhere, thinking, where am I going? So do your homework on the hikes you're going to do so that you know exactly what to expect. Kind of gone through parking a little bit for the different trailheads. Things like Lava Point, Wildcat Trail, the Kolob section, plenty of adequate parking. When you get in the main park, you get along the Highway 9, parking's a whole different animal. It's tough to find a spot sometimes, especially if you go in peak season or on the weekends or holidays. It's going to be a little tough, but I've always been able to manage to find a parking spot when I needed it. Just takes a little bit more work. I will add that one of the main places to park is the visitor center, and that fills up. If you're going to the visitor center, get there really early. You may have problems finding a parking spot there. So I've talked about shuttles a little bit. If you're doing something like the Narrows top down or Subway top down or the West Rim Trail, you have to hire a private shuttle. They don't have park shuttles that run those routes. You should check and confirm this, but the only park shuttle route that I know of is they go from the visitor center up to the Temple of Sinawava in Zion Canyon and back. Now those, you just have to wait in line, and I forget the hours of operation. They do change periodically and throughout the year, but you miss the last shuttle and you're all the way up at the Riverwalk. You are now going to be walking, I think it's like 5 miles down the road to get back to the visitor center to your car. So know the shuttle hours of operation, and if you're doing one of those more adventurous trails, make sure you book your private shuttle ahead of time. Finally, wouldn't be a Zion video without mentioning the crowds. Very popular area. Tons of people go here every year, millions upon millions. It's just what it is. The more popular and the easier a trail is, the more people that are going to be on it. That's just the national park. If you don't like the crowds, you're going to have to put a little more work into your hike, do something like backpacking, canyoneering, get into that. I've had plenty of trips there that I haven't seen anybody for days. Anyway, that's it. There's a lot more to it, but that would be a 5-hour video. I could probably make a series of them talking about Zion forever. Amazing place, incredible sights. It just blows my mind that there are that many incredible and diverse hikes and trails in such a small area. Hopefully you found this video helpful. And if you haven't been to Zion, go check it out. You won't be disappointed. So that's, what am I saying? So let's jump into it. It just blows my mind that there are not just that many. So let's jump right into it. First hike I'm going to go over at the Temple of Sinawava. Open sores, but you should probably go to a doctor if you're, anyway. Depending on what you're going to do, the permitting system, and depending on what you're, so be sure, and the permits. So the trails, I think I've covered. No, I'm not going to talk about that. Another short and sweet one right off of the road. And what's the road that goes through here? What the?